Hello, everyone, and welcome to Osquery Office Hours. It is January. I think this is our first meeting in a little while because we canceled New Year's. But Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome back. And yeah, go Osquery. So we've got a couple of people I don't recognize. So welcome, Brock. Welcome, Konstantin. Whatever brings you here, if you've got questions. Love to see some new people. So let's see. Our usual agenda is we start with announcements. The obvious one is that we cut Osquery, what version? 5.15. We made a 5.15 right before New Year's. So Osquery 5.15 is out there, and I imagine we'll talk about that a little later in the meeting. That's all the announcements I have. Other folks? Okay. Next section is sort of an open section for questions, issues, PRs, anything people want to talk about. Brock, I think you said you added some things, so all you.
Okay, I don't mean to go first, but there's two things. There's one, it's this comment from an issue in the fleet repo regarding storing the fleet TLS certificate and key in keychain. Basically, I think the question here is pretty simple. Victor says that we have a POC of this internally working, but I think that this is an issue. By writing that, what I assume he meant is that this could be an issue that was addressed at Osquery core rather than fleet taking over the work. So I think the question is, what is the status of you guys, taking this on or looking at it again?
So I'll sort of start by saying Osquery is a volunteer project, and while there are various vendors, we're sort of a loose collection of volunteers that are mostly coordinated with each other. So I don't know if anyone's picking up, storing TLS certificates in the keychains. I think people are amenable to that. I just don't know that anyone has picked up that work.
Okay, and I mean, I don't really have any. I think that there's probably like implementation details that I'm missing. I think there's probably a piece in Osquery that would make this easier to do rather than doing something in Fleet that would make that work. So I guess I totally understand what you're saying, and maybe what I need to do is get some more detail on what exactly it would take to accomplish this on your side, and either add to an existing Osquery issue or make a new one if that's a thing that needs to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like something that Osquery would be willing to take on, but we probably just need to, as Fleet, put in the work to build it.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Zach.
Oh, sorry, if I can mention, so we are working on that. It's actually been in work since a while. I think this is partially my fault. I only mentioned this, I think, a couple of times in previous office hours. It's just a bit of slow work for but anyway, how it's working, so the support is both for macOS and Windows. And the state I am in currently, it works for both of the platforms. We are in a phase where we are gathering feedback from our customer. I cannot promise, though, timelines. What I can say is after the feedback, there is still some code cleanup to do in there, especially around error reporting. But also, to be more specific, the implementation uses, so it creates 2 custom providers for OpenSSL. this permits OpenSSL to see the system stores as OpenSSL stores or specifically X509 stores, and therefore, use the certificates and the private key in there without exporting it. So it is actually using the Windows and macOS specific APIs internally.
Awesome. That's great. I don't think that we have any like specific urgency around this, but I think that there's some prospective customers that were asking about it. But the fact that it's being worked on is more than I hoped for. So that's great.
Yeah, I think in the past I spoke with Victor. I see the comment was from
The
Victor.
comment is Victor. Yeah.
I know he was interested, but again, unfortunately, we don't have we are not full time on this. So yeah.
Cool.
Is this something that Fleet would want to help y'all with? Is this something they could help you with?
So honestly, again, not right now. I have to ask, maybe push a bit our customer to maybe try it and give us a feedback. Because I'd like to do the main cleanups, open it as soon as possible upstream, and then do the final work. And given that there is a bit of code to review, definitely there would be like having multiple eyes on that code definitely helps. And so I would say that would be the most effective way.
Mm-hmm.
Stefano, do you have an issue for this at hand? And maybe what I can do is just get Victor to kind of reach out on that ticket. If there is any collaboration you guys can do just to bump the ticket from Victor's side. If you don't have one, that's okay.
No, there's no one. I have to create it. Yeah.
Okay.
Bumping tickets may not achieve any meaningful outcome.
Okay, sure.
Right, like we're like, you're looking at a group of volunteers, and I feel like you're sort of addressing us as if we are engineers working for you.
I'm really not meaning to imply that in any way.
So like, I think we'd love the feature, and if Stefano is working on code, that's amazing.
Yeah,
but
agreed.
Like saying, Stefano, I'll bump this ticket for you. Like, I don't know, it's just noise.
Sorry, I was just offering to.
I think I was hearing that the idea was that there's like someone on our team who might be able to help when it's ready for that, and that if there was a ticket tracking this, they could get that information.
I don't know. It may be an internal travel bits ticket, but I'll leave that for some.
I mean, I do think that if there's long running work, like, it would be awesome if it could be documented in issues, because it seems like this might have been something that we might have just started working on because we had no idea that you were, and then there would have been collisions.
Yeah, if there's anything like contextual or useful background that can go in an issue, it's like okay with me that we have so many open issues, because they do kind of work as a historical log. If I think like why something isn't working, it's always there in an issue. It's been discussed 2 years ago. We just didn't have a resolution or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things we'd love to do, but unless someone steps up and does them, and to acknowledge it, like Fleet does a lot of work inside Osquery, so you're one of the people who steps up.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that issues and updates to issues that add additional information are completely welcome.
Yeah. Anyone want to talk about any other parts of MPLS? I guess, Stefano, you said y'all are a little bit blocked on your customer testing it.
Yeah.
Is that code you could put up for other people to test, or is it sort of got to wait on the customer?
I would say the main issue, there is some cleanup I have to do, but unfortunately I don't have the time for quite a while, meaning at least a month. Because yes, what I gave, like the functionality is there, but there's quite a bit of debugging code in there still. So yeah. It wouldn't be helpful to review that. Yeah, sorry, I have not opened before. Like this is something that it's a year that is going on. I did not open an issue initially, also because what exactly was the solution that was not clear necessarily from the start. I didn't want to block like anyone, or like at the same time, have people again wait on me necessarily if they found a way to implement it faster, or But yeah, at this point, I can say I'm definitely close to it. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you can drop a pile of debugging code and see if anyone else wants to clean it up, or if that's unreasonable. But you know, if we've got engineers that they're happy to throw at it.
I'm a bit in the middle of it. So yeah, it's in flux state. It's not publishable. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I think it sounds like we should just be aware that if it becomes more urgent for us, that we need to coordinate with Stefano that we're going to do something that conflicts with his work, or we can look at his work as a POC, or maybe he'll be willing to let us try to do that cleanup or whatnot. But it sounds like we're potentially in a bit of a tricky spot where maybe most of the work has been done, but it's not like being released to the public, and depending on what our timelines end up looking like, that could end up creating some conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me speak with my colleagues internally on a couple of details, and yeah, I'll let you know.
Awesome.
Okay. Anyone want to say anything else about MTLS? If not, IntelliJ plugins.
Hey, I'm Constantine. I just joined Fleet. Looking through some requests, I noticed we have a request from, I guess, to add IntelliJ plugins as part of the software list in Fleet. I thought, we can obviously maybe write something in Fleet Core to do this, but it seems prime for something that Osquery would be handling, especially because we want to cross-platform on Mac OS X and Linux and Windows. And I was just curious, just before I start down this path of exploring, would that be something that would be akin to something like, like the VS Code extensions table? Obviously, it would be its own separate table, IntelliJ extensions or plugins or whatever it may be. Is that something that you all would be amenable to? I mean, I'm happy to do the work for it. I'm just curious if anyone had any thoughts before I started down this journey.
It makes sense to me. The only thing I have no idea where IntelliJ stores any of this information. And one of the things that we haven't talked about recently, but like if it's all in a SQLite database, is an ATC table a better route? If it's all in a JSON file or a plist file, do you want to do that? but I don't know. It might not be, and it might be inconsistent by platform. So I'm not. An IntelliJ table makes sense, and you probably have to research it before you can figure out where the bounds there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just say, Constantine, like, it's a good idea to check in on appetite for things before putting the effort into building them. To me, it sounds like something that we'd want in Osquery if it can fit, if the code can fit well in, and sounds like Seth agrees. So I would say, do the research and go ahead and submit a PR. Unless the research indicates that something would have to be done that would make it incompatible with the Osquery's model, like, and I'm not sure if you've seen the building new tables documentation. You have, okay, so cool. So, if there were things like, well, you had to shell out to IntelliJ or something to get the list of plugins, then it would be like, well, we're not going to put that into Osquery core because we don't allow shelling out. If there's not that kind of thing, I would think, like, go ahead.
Yeah,
Okay.
what Zach said.
Great. Yeah, no, I'll definitely do the research ahead of time. Obviously, it just seemed like a prime candidate for another table. Pending whatever IntelliJ does to store its extensions and plugins.
And it's been asked for, multiple times by multiple.
Yeah, and do feel free to come join the office hours and ask here, or file an issue and asking, are we open to receiving a table for doing X? That's a great idea before putting in the effort to actually building something and then finding that there might be some issue. But I would say we do accept most tables. I think we probably accept most tables that people submit.
Yeah, the places where we've run into questions around whether or not to accept tables are really, as Zach says, shelling out. We're like, we don't shell out. And places where there's been questions about, like, is this table doing bad things with untrusted user input? So I know we've had a couple of places where we've been very cautious and ultimately refused things because we didn't think they met the security standards as written.
Or clear, like, privacy violations.
Yeah.
Or if you're doing a full lock of a disk or something like that would have indeterminate runtime. But we hope to try to have all of those rules listed in the contributing document. So if you find that and it's not clear, let us know. We can clarify that better.
Yeah.
Great. Sounds good. I appreciate it.
I did have one other issue that I put in there with that summary.
Take it away.
And Zach, I'm probably going to need your help on this. You and I talked about it very briefly, but one of our customers is looking to replace, I believe, this EDR tool that was getting them some telemetry that they're hoping to replace with Osquery. And part of collecting that data for them means getting parent PIDs, which...
Wait, Brock, it was parent command line, right? For
parent command, yes, exactly, yes. And so, and you said that there might be some controversy around implementing this potentially. So, but basically the idea is that they want to replace this tool that has this very low level EDR function. They need to filter the data before they bring it into their SIM. And is this something that Osquery wants to or could do?
Yeah, and I think that what came up for me around this was I was wondering as we contemplated, so again, like to try to TLDR this, the process events table includes the parent PID, but doing joins on event-based tables doesn't work very well because of the way the events optimization code works. So you can't really just do a join from process events to process events to get the parent PID. Sorry, you already have the parent PID as a column. You can't do a join very effectively to get the parent command line.
Yeah.
That will only work under, like, limited, definitely not reliably based on the way that events optimization works in Osquery. So like a perhaps relatively simple approach to implementing something like this would be adding a new parent command line column in process events. I don't know if that starts to cause concerns for people that like, well, but we're adding, like, we already have parent PID, like, can't we just get it with a join? The answer is no, we can't really just get it with a join. But also then we're starting to sort of like denormalize data in schema. And so I, you know, as I started thinking about this, I had a couple of ideas of potentially other ways we could start to like I think the easiest way to implement this would be just add the parent command line column and then do some like sort of caching sort of command lines in relation to PIDs and then be able to fill that in when we write events.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I have an implementation question. Buried somewhere in the Osquery code, there's a column option about like caching and optimization. There's like a cache this, or it's a table option, and it's always confused me because I've never understood what the scope of that cache is, right? And my recollection is that Teddy has said the scope of that cache is just the running query. So it's just like this really short-lived cache. And I wonder if one way to thread the needle is to be like, well, actually, during query execution, that table should be fixed. But I don't know how to like thread that through the query planner.
Yeah, and I don't think that caching is going to have to do. Okay, I don't remember completely. Maybe someone else remembers better, so just feel free to interrupt me. But I don't think that caching is going to have to do with the query planner. I think it's going to have to do more with the generate function that the planner is kind of naive to.
Yeah. One of the things I wished we had, I forget what led me down this path, is I feel like we have it's like a deep design bug in Osquery because we are effectively an API translator. Every time you call generate, we regenerate all the data, right? And that creates these odd situations like you're describing, because what you really want is a stable data snapshot across the lifetime of a query.
Yeah.
And I don't know it, like if we could create a something where like in every query context we knew, well, like, is this the same query, a different query? Like if every query came in with a UUID from SQLite, then we could implement our own caching at the generate level. I assume you know what I'm trying to say.
I think that is basically what the caching does that you're talking about, but it's different with event-based tables. The reason why it's different with events is because, and it's actually, you know, interesting because this is related to, it's definitely not the same thing, but it's related to the bug that I reported about events optimization. But the way that the events optimization works is, you know, like events keep coming in over time. And when a query against an event-based table runs, Osquery goes, okay, what was the most recent event for this? What was the most recent event ID from this table that was looked at the last time this query ran? Let me start from the next event after that when doing the generation. So the issue becomes when you try to do a join like this, let's say in time period 1, the init process starts or whatever, systemd starts. Actually, that probably happened. Well, that definitely happens before Osquery starts. So let's say, I don't know, what's something else? So, okay, bash. So bash starts during time period 1, and that gets logged when the process events query runs. Now, when you go, now time period 2 starts, and bash has forked an exec hat, whatever, anything. Now, let's say we want to get the parent command line from cat and we were to try to do the join of process events to process events, syntactically, there's no problem here. But when the generate function gets called, the row from the bash execution never gets considered at all because the events optimization says, we've already looked at that event ID. And so you'd get the join would fail. It would,
right.
You know, if you did an outer join, you'd still get a row. If you did an inner join, you'd get nothing.
Well, but I would posit that the bug here, or like the design bug here, is that the generate functions don't have a larger concept of the start and end of a query execution. Because if you have a complex query that might call multiple generates across multiple tables, there's nothing that in the tables might know that the overall query has ended. Like the query planner abstracts that from the generates. So, you know, if we were writing in like a pure Go code base, you would maybe want to say something like slap a defer somewhere that checks for the end of the query execution, right?
And we do it with scheduled queries. We have that to some extent, and like the watchdog functionality uses it, where we write to RocksDB actually like this particular query is executing, and then we start doing the execution, and then if the watchdog kills it, it knows when it restarts, like, oh, that key is still written, so actually it was killed while.
Funny story. I think we actually have a bug lurking in that code too, but
This is all really fascinating because to me, what I hear you guys saying is that it it gets to the heart of whether or not Fleet can be used as an EDR. Because if there is no context for the query, as you're saying, it's like, would you be able to use this to do like real-time detection in the way that customers of an EDR expect, right? If it's like not literally capturing every event in the proper context, you don't know if the security.
It does capture every event. That's not the issue.
Yeah.
The issue is when you try to correlate events.
Yeah. It
really correlate them inside of Osquery. If you were
correlating them outside of Osquery is different. If you just need to get the logs of all the events, it works fine.
Yep.
It's the correlation that becomes the issue. So then coming back to this like parent command line issue, like there's a probably relatively simple fix here, but with the question of like, is it acceptable to folks that we just add a parent command line option, even though like there's already command line and you'd think you could just do the join, but it doesn't work. It's not clear how it could be made to work to actually do the join.
Well, I think it is clear how it could be made to work. It just feels very hard to me. Right? Because
it's not clear how it could be made to work and still maintain the performance of event-based queries.
I wouldn't say that, right? Because like I think that there's space here, right? I think there's I see two issues, right? And one of them is around maybe they're the same issue. I'm not sure, but like one of them is this question of when a query is executing, what is the underlying data? And what you've pointed out is that for an evented table, the data is sort of there, and we're just scoping it by kind of the start and end IDs, I guess, the row IDs, right? And I feel like there's potentially a fix there to say, okay, we'll generate, wherever we store the last seen event ID, we should move that up, maybe using the similar style as the watchdog or maybe some other deferral mechanism, so that it, knows that it's in the same query. Like I think that the fundamental flaw is that you don't know if you're in the same query or the next query, because that information doesn't get down to generate.
Well, it does. Each query stores a separate optimize identifier.
Is it in the query context?
Let's see. I don't think it's just was really deeply digging into this code. It's not passed in the query context, but it is evaluated. It's retrieved from RocksDB when the generate function gets called for an event subscriber table.
I mean, maybe I'm tangled in whatever the other thing I wanted a while ago is. I assume, and maybe I should just go pull the code up, that the generate function is what's responsible for the optimization, or is it up a level?
Yes, it would be the generate function only considers events that have not been seen since the last execution of this query.
Right.
But even if you have 10 queries to the process events table, each one keeps its own optimization data.
Right. But then, I mean, then why doesn't a self join? Oh, we may be saying different things. When you say queries, you mean like I have select star from processes where PID like Ceph or something as a query, right? When I'm saying query, I almost mean like the running instance of the query, like the context. The immediate.
I mean, let's say you have select star from process events where name like bash.
Yeah.
And you have select star from process events where name like ZSH.
Right. Beautiful.
Each of those maintains, or Osquery maintains for each of those queries its own separate optimization information.
Okay. And what I'm trying to say is, if I think about like sort of an HTTP model or something, right? Each request has its own context that comes in, right? It's
yeah.
And what I have found myself wishing for in Osquery is for a generate to know, not is this coming out of the same select star from bash scheduled query that runs every hour, but instead I'd like to know, is this running in the same, when I type select star from processes, join processes, join processes, join processes, because I'm doing something ridiculous, how can I know that those generates are part of the same execution?
Oh, I see. Yes, and theoretically we could. Theoretically, I think we could do that, but then the question would still be like, how would you know within the generate function when optimizations should be on versus off? Stefano.
Maybe I missed some difference from the initial concern, but even if you are able to cache and store the event you are getting now in the query, the parent PID in there is not guaranteed to be in the events that the query will get from the database, unless you are indefinitely storing events in the database.
That's for sure the case, that it's not guaranteed to be there no matter what.
Yeah. So this. Maybe I thought you were still thinking of this as a solution for the events case, and yeah, my comment was just I wasn't sure how this would help, because again, you don't have the event you want to join against necessarily in the rows you are getting out of that query.
Yeah, and so I think, Stefano, what you're referring to is the fact that there's event expiration and events max, which means that events, which means that even if the optimization is turned off, older events are still expired. But we still could do something we still could have an in-memory cache that just keeps, for a given PID, what's the last command line that was used. And then we could populate a parent command line column.
Yeah. Normally that's a scan of proc while having the events already enabled, and then you apply the events on the cache you created with scan and proc, so you converge. Well, anyway, there are the details.
Yes, I think that's what I was imagining. When you get a new event ingested, look up in the cache and store actually with the new event the parent command line, and it's denormalization, I would think, in the context of SQL databases, where instead of joining for data, you actually store duplicated kind of data in the row itself. But people do that sometimes for optimization purposes.
Is outside of Osquery, Zach, is there a workaround if you did add that column where someone could use aggregated time series data to achieve the same result until Osquery did the thing? Does that
if they're shipping logs to Splunk, you could do this, you could do the join in Splunk basically.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Probably any complex event processing system. Like this
Yeah, if
is
you're shipping
a
them,
window
if you're shipping
join.
them anywhere that they can be queried with a
Yeah.
sufficiently robust query, and probably S3, Elastic, probably pretty much anywhere, Snowflake,
Yep.
then the join can be done in the destination.
So having that column added sounds like to me, a good first step if that's a thing. And then these other optimizations sound
Well, the
great.
column that allows you to do it's already possible to do the join.
Okay.
There's nothing that needs to change to do the join in your log aggregation
Okay.
platform, because you already can get the parent PID, and you should in theory you should be able to, in your log aggregation platform, go, okay, like, let me join to the most recent row that has this PID and assume that that's the parent information.
That was my initial reaction to what he asked about it, because it's like, well, how do you know that the thing you were looking for even had they're not all going to show that they have a parent PID, but okay, this is making sense to me.
Well, they will all, any process will have a parent PID.
Yeah. Right, but some process might not have children, is what I guess is what I mean.
Process might not have children, sure, for sure, but it will still have a parent. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That great discussion, and only understood half of it.
Yeah, I'm really on the fence about whether we'd want to denormalize Zach. It feels like this very narrow thing that solves like one specific problem, but doesn't generalize. And
Yeah, so then I do have ideas on how it could kind of generalize. Like, I wonder if you could generalize it to, like, add a new SQL function that allows accessing like cached data. So then it's like, okay, you don't just want the command line, but you want, like, look up process events cache parens, like, PID, comma, command line, like, where you're looking up in the cache, like, for a given PID. Like, it seems possible. It seems possible.
I mean, if you want to go down like that sort of crazy path, you could also imagine a world where you create tables, and the act of creating the tables creates a cache of the table.
That's what I was just going to say.
Create a like PPID cache.
At the risk of sounding dumb, that is just what I was
table.
going to say.
But like this is all very messy. Like, I think we should just fix the self-join and event optimization. And I mean, I recognize that yes, events could expire out if you have a high enough rate of events, but I bet that's not that common on the process table.
Depends on how things are configured. By default, Osquery expires events after 60 minutes.
I guess that's maybe true. So if you had a long running thing, then it would sit there. Okay. Yeah, okay. I guess I buy it.
Is adding this cache like going to exponentially increase potentially the amount of, like, is it a performance issue? I guess is the dumb guy way of asking that.
That will definitely have a non-zero performance cost.
Yeah.
I wanted to add, there's also an issue where if you only have this generic way of, at least this is how I was imagining when you mentioned it, this generic way of storing, like, caching data, at least somewhat indefinitely, it is not then specific to where this data is come from and how it is gathered and how it can be potentially incorrect. And specifically with events, if you're losing events, you do not have the correct view of the hierarchies between processes. Eventually, there's also PID reuse. So
yeah.
So like with the ad hoc solution, you would have to sometimes like rescan proc to be sure that you are up to date, and there is still a chance, obviously, to be out of date or like not fully in sync and present incorrect data. But yeah, there are specifics, I think, that have to be baked in.
If you want a disgusting answer, I wonder if SQLite supports materialized views.
It does.
There's also maybe some discussion. Yeah, so I don't know. Like you could bake that into your query. Doesn't handle the case of events expiration though.
And even optimization itself, like the event with the parent PID has to exist in the events you're querying in that moment. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you could sit there and build a temp table.
You could also turn off events optimization and then self joins do work, but the performance penalty should be pretty bad.
Yeah.
Because then it means that you actually generate all these events that end up getting filtered out by the differential function every time the query runs.
Do you have a sense of whether this customer's use case, does it involve things where where event expiration would be an issue, or is event expiration less of an issue here?
I mean, I don't know the answer to that question, but I guess if I'm just hearing someone say, I'd like to use Osquery to replace my EDR, what an EDR does is effectively attempt to do real-time detection of events and pluck out the bad ones and stop them if they can. So like, I don't know that that having the cache is more important than the initial detection, if that answer makes any sense. Like, I don't know the answer, but it's like having the long-term, like having the thing live longer as opposed to immediately making sure that you're detecting things correctly and having the data that you're collecting be in sync with the actual state of the computer. That latter thing seems like way more important than the former. If that makes sense.
I mean, as Zach said, like if you gather the events, you're gathering all the events, and
Yeah.
the question now becomes like, at what layer are you joining them?
Right.
And if you're, EDR software is hardly universal, right? There's 100 EDR vendors out there, and they each have a slightly overlapping set of things that they do.
Yep. Agreed.
There is also with this one the possibility of it's not as reliable, but there's the possibility of joining to the processes table.
Right.
And
Yeah.
getting the current, at least looking up, given the current PID, looking up the command line of the current process running with that PID.
And I
And
think
that's definitely not a guarantee, but it's better,
Well,
maybe better than nothing.
So some of why I'm like trying to understand this, right, is if the use case is around something like, hey, we want to know when someone is executing shell code, and we think it's going to be a short-lived process, and we want to maybe track what it's doing, then everything is probably within the event's expiration window and talking about, well, maybe we should fix self-joins and events optimization would cover that use case and improve OS query. We say, no, actually, these are going to be long-lived processes. Maybe they're running some, I don't know, Java process that can execute shell codes, and we want to know every time someone executes something weird through the Java process, then, solving that self-join problem isn't going to solve this because those events will expire out. But as I point out, maybe querying against the process table solves that. So I don't sort of like nosing around, like, I think what I'm, maybe the other way to say this is caching the parent command lines feels like the least good solution. Like, it just doesn't feel like it does the right thing for us as a project. But I mean, Zach also, is pretty authoritative in his own way. So
I mean, I agree with what you just said. I think that the first thing you described, based on my conversations with this guy from this engineering team, is more important than the latter. But and I also think there are ways already to get the latter information if you really want it. Like you can look up if something happened, but what they're trying to do is detect something when it happens, and maybe make Osquery do something that is hard. I don't know.
I would guess that like having the parent command line just makes it easier to write detections.
Yeah.
Then you write your detection on a single row rather than having to write a detection that does like some query against your log aggregation platform.
I did put this in the summary, but it probably wasn't clear. I think the thing that he expressed the most concern about was the amount of data that they would have to ingest into the SIM to do it with what they currently can collect. And what they're expecting is some way of filtering prior to the ingest.
Yeah, because I guess it would also allow you to do things like write your Osquery query to say, where parent command line,
yes,
like whatever, and then do filtering, on what even gets ingested into the SIM in the first place. Right. Yeah. It does make sense.
Cool.
Keep also in mind that this logic is already like it's necessary, for instance, with the current implementation of BPF. Like there is a so-called system state tracker, which is using different events to create a view of the system, which then permits other events to be improved in the sense they have additional data.
So Stefano,
Stefano, you're talking about like that we're already caching this kind of data for the BPF implementation?
Yeah.
Does that mean they'd have to have the BPF, the evented tables, like the socket table and the process table turned on for that?
Well, so this cache is specific to BPF. Like it's in the code for BPF. It is being created for those specific events. So it's not like it's also something you would need to access directly with code anyway.
I think the implication is it's not like a feature that can be used. I think Stefano's point is just that this kind of caching is something that we already do in Osquery because it is necessary for certain kinds of tables.
Got it. Okay. Interesting.
And to expose it in some way would require writing code, not writing queries. Is that right, Stefano?
Yeah, and even then, it's a bit of a question at a certain point, how many reimplementations, because in some cases you need to cache some more, some less, but in some cases you are caching the same thing. So there's a question of, again, can we eventually do a single implementation that caches the data that is necessary for all those kind of events that want to know, for instance, a parent command line in the past, taking it from the past. But and there was also actually I think it was an issue on Osquery, but I came across a similar request with macOS events. But
I think it's only tangentially related, but I think there's a lot of places where we don't have a very developed caching story, and we end up kind of implementing it ad hoc, right? The Windows users and groups, the place that this is where we have to cache processes for the way the watchdog works. I can't remember if we've got any other sort of funny little cache layers here and there.
Yeah, the problem is mostly they have different invalidation rules, different. Like, okay, I can still see like you can create a generic API that, again, please catch me these, and then you provide a function which, if true, then it invalidates the cache, and so you can still plug custom logic there. But you do need custom logic somewhere.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that's it for that request as far as I'm concerned. It's a very, very interesting discussion. Thanks for talking it over.
Yeah, I mean, Zach, if this is something you're picking up, then it may be something that we talk about a bit more and figure out if there's a change. Okay.
Cool.
I actually have
Okay.
to drop, guys, but I appreciate all of you and the discussion. Thanks for letting me join.
Of course.
I think the only other thing on the agenda is the 5:15 release.
Yeah, what's going on with that? We have it on our alpha channel, but we haven't pushed it to beta yet. Probably just because we've been a little busy. I don't think we've seen any alpha issues. Have y'all seen anything?
No, I think a substantial number of our devices used by people within Fleet are running 5:15 and seems to be working fine.
I'm good calling it stable. You want to call it stable?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay, let's do it.
So that means updating the website and marking it as a stable release on GitHub?
It means triggering code signing to push it to stable, triggering the PR job to update the website, and marking the GitHub release stable. So it's three things. I can probably go click some of them right now.
Okay, thanks.
Release to buckets, run workflow, 5.15. Sometime I wonder if we should call ourselves version 6, but like, I don't know.
You mean like a new major version?
Yeah, doesn't feel right. We haven't changed anything major. But,
I mean, Fleet is at like minor version number 60 or something like that at this point.
let's see, website, make a website action. Actions. Pull requests. What's all this nonsense? Oh, Stefano, you had a PR we never merged. Updating the Slack invite. I assume this is still good, so I'm just going to merge it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm right here. What else is in here? That's all stuff I don't want to think about. Okay, actions. Release Osquery version to website. Branch source release. Yeah, looks right to me. Okay. I have kicked off the 2 GitHub actions, so I'll keep an eye on those and make sure they finish okay.
Thank you. I need to go at the top of the hour, but I would also mention that I attempted to get us onto Slack's nonprofit thing, and they rejected it because you need to be registered under, like, because Osquery in the name itself is not registered as a nonprofit because we're part of the Linux Foundation. It seemed like very arbitrary, and I just didn't really have the energy to try to fight and make it happen. So I don't know if our workspace has reverted to the free one yet. Seems unfortunate to lose the records, but then, like, I don't know.
I agree. I'm like, it feels unfortunate, but I'm not up for paying like $3K a month.
No, for sure not. It does seem like if someone, like, it's just hard for me to motivate for it after like the saga of dealing with Microsoft recently. It does seem like I suspect if we could get to some kind of reasonable person there and be like, look, like, we are legit, please do this. Like, all you're doing is just like hurting the community and you're not going to get money from us, they would maybe do it. Because it was someone who rejected it from like a third party organization.
Is
And
it TechSoup?
yes.
They do other CA vetting as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and they were like, oh yeah, because the guideline is this, and then I looked like on Slack's website, it doesn't say anything about the guideline being met. So it's just like, yeah. Anyway, I think it's there for someone to try to tackle if they want to. I don't have the heart for it right now. Maybe I'd get back to it someday, especially if we seem to be experiencing pain with the Slack stuff.
You also set up the Linen Dev logger.
Oh yeah, that's still around.
As far as I know.
Oh yeah, it's on chat.osquery.io. Yeah, okay, so there's search there. Like, I don't know how great it works, but it is there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's going to vanish someday.
It might. Like, I think that's something that we're paying for, but not that much. I don't think there's a risk of us stopping paying for it. I think that the risk would be that the linen folks like shut down their operations.
Yeah, probably. I imagine it's dirt cheap. We just don't have that much traffic. So
So
Yeah.
what is this? This is a bot that's in our channels that records everything.
Yeah, and then makes it like SEO.
it makes it public and Google searches it. It's great.
Yeah.
You can't hide anymore.
I mean, that's good because we still have a record.
Yeah.
I just didn't
wonder-
know about this. It's been, been on the project for like 6 years, but
This was added like a year ago or something, maybe.
Oh, more than that. Maybe 2.
okay.
Okay, I do have to run, y'all. Thank you.
The other thing we could see is if we know anyone at Slack, sometimes they can like sponsor an org. So that's another route. I don't remember if I know anyone at Slack right now or not.
The Linux Foundation should have an FAQ, right? I mean, this is the kind of thing you would hope that they have they have addressed before.
I mean, maybe they have a work. I don't know what they do. I don't know what they do.
Maybe they would direct you to an OSS Slack with alternative. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Anyhow, I should probably vanish as well.
Same
Thank
for
you
me.
all. And I will talk to you in a few weeks.
Bye.